Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have another collaboration beer, and this is one that I think will be really quite interesting. It's an unusual collaboration. This one is half Swedish and half Russian. So both of the breweries involved here I've encountered and reviewed for you on the channel before, but I've never had this particular style of beer from either of them, so that makes it even more interesting. So for the Swedish side of things, we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg you'd say in Swedish, the craft beer capital of Sweden, and we're having a look at yet another beer involving Stigbergets Bryggeri. I've reviewed a hell of a lot of different things from them recently, but this particular beer is one that's brewed in collaboration with AF Brew, who come from St. Petersburg over in Russia, and the beer itself is called the Tsar Cockerel, and it comes in at 12% ABV, an American style barley wine. Both of the beers that I've had before from AF Brew have been Imperial Stouts, the Trinity Black, which was a collaboration with Pohjola from Estonia and Jagovor from Moscow, and the other one was the Fear of the Zafir, which was a beautiful kind of dessert style stout actually that was done in collaboration with Lervigaktia Brewery from Stavanger up in Norway. I've never had a barley wine either from Stigbergets. Most of the beers I've had, of course, have been most of them have been IPAs, New England IPAs. I've had one or two Imperial Stouts from them and stuff, and a few sours and things. The only thing that would come close to this probably is the Long Boil barley wine from OO Brewing, because their brewer, Ole Anderson, used to be the main brewer for Stigbergets, of course. But a really interesting beer, this one, and I'm very curious to see how it's going to turn out. Two very good breweries involved here, so hopefully we are in for a little bit of a treat, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done both from Stigbergets Bryggeri and from AF Brew. Hopefully I can add more to both in the fairly near future. You'll definitely see some Stigbergets ones soon, and hopefully some more AF Brews relatively soon as well. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you, and another one for all the Russian beers. The Swedish one's being added to very regular, the Russian one whenever I get the chance. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the breweries then, on to my brewery notes, and we'll start with Stigbergets then, since these guys are the home brewery. So Stigbergets Bryggeri, as I've told you many a time before, are based in Gothenburg, and they were founded by Nils Hultkrantz and Richard Simonsson, and the pair of these guys owned two bars that shared the one kitchen. This is the Bar Chino and the Hagabions Cafe, which are located on Linagatan in the city, and both of these opened back in 2007. Probably by the time this video publishes, actually, you will have seen my little out and about video where I went to visit Bar Chino and the Hagabions Cafe, and as the name Bar Chino suggests, I never made the connection before, but it is an active cinema. The bar's in the basement and the cafe is in the kind of lobby area, if you like. But originally the idea that these guys had was to brew a few beers that they could sell in the bars, and this led to them kegging the beers and then selling them onto other pubs as well, before they eventually started bottling them in November of 2014. So the original beers that they were doing were mainly English and German styles, but of course more recently they developed into the more American hoppy styles of beer, and this is where they really started to make their name. So the original head brewer was Ole Anderson, and he's also the co-owner of OO Brewing. He works there full-time now as of 2017, if I remember correctly. He was replaced for a period of Barnaby Struve, who was the vice president at Three Floyds. He came in to help them out for a few months before moving on himself, and recently the brewery have also opened up a new brewery at Partihalarna, which is where they brew 5,000 litre batches at a time, and they're also working on sour beers now as well, which they started releasing in early 2019. They've also started selling their beers mainly in 440ml cans instead, and the higher alcohol beers and the sour beers tend to come in these little 330ml things as well. This means that they can export their beers a lot more easily, and they've also gotten a brew team now of Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown, and Lucas Monroyd, who used to work for All In Brewing, one of the numerous gypsy breweries around Gothenburg. But these guys, if you're interested in Swedish beer, are one that you definitely want to check out. Mainly famous for their New England IPAs, the Amazing Haze, the Muddle, the original GBG beer. It was 2016, if I remember correctly. These guys were one of the breweries that were instrumental in bringing the New England IPAs to Sweden, of course, and they've made a hell of a lot, a hell of a name for themselves since then, and they've done a hell of a lot of different New England IPAs as well. The Amazing Haze is pretty much a cult classic when it comes to Swedish craft beer these days, and I would recommend you check that out. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Stigbergets Bryggeri for just now. If you want to learn more, check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And if you're interested in the different beers that they've done, I'd recommend that you take a look at the Rate Beer and Untappd pages as well. So anyway, on to the Russian side of things then, to AF Brew. So AF Brew, as I've told you before, are based in St. Petersburg, and they were founded back in 2012 by Nikita Filipov, Dmitry Buldakov and Artem Kolchakov. So they'd apparently worked for Baltica for a number of years, but they were interested in experimental beer, and they said that there was a little bit of a witch hunt for them because they started brewing beers just as a kind of hobby, and they still worked for Baltica at the time, and they received an appointment with the CEO of the company who told them that they had to stop brewing their small batch beers immediately because it was a threat to Baltica, even though they are like a massive multinational corporation and these guys were just kind of brewing beer for fun. But they started off as a gypsy brewery, nomad brewery, however you want to term them, and so they brewed their beers in a lot of different places before they eventually built their own brewery, which opened up in November of 2016. This brewery has an on-site tap room, and they also own the Red Rum Bar in the city as well, so you can get the AF Brew beers at either location in St. Petersburg. AF apparently stands for Anti-Factory, because they chose this name because they felt that craft beer was a way to kind of escape the everyday escapades of life, if you like. And as of September 2019, when I made the notes for these guys, they've produced well over 150 different types of beers. So a very prolific Russian brewery, this one, widely regarded as one of the best in the country, along with the likes of Zhagovor and Stam and things like that. From what I understand, the Russian craft beer scene only started off a couple of years ago, and it was partly due to the fact that the Russian ruble crashed in value, so a lot of people lost jobs and things, and they started to just do their own thing. Craft beer came out of that, and it's really great now in 2019 to see the Russian beers starting to make their way out of Russia and into Europe a little bit, and to start to see these breweries being of the size now where they can start to export their beers too. But yeah, a really interesting company, this one. I've reviewed a couple of beers from Russian craft beers over the last little while, and hopefully I can do them a little bit more regularly too, so hopefully that's something you'll see on the channel too. But definitely cool to encounter another Russian craft beer, and hopefully that continues for a long time. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about AF Brew for the moment. These guys do IPAs, they do a few, I don't know if they do sours yet, but they do IPAs, imperial stouts, amongst other things, and they're definitely worth checking out if you're interested in Russian craft beer. Hopefully I can make it to St. Petersburg at some time in the fairly near future and go and visit some of the craft beer locations around the city, including AF Brew. But that's all you need to know about them for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. I'm assuming they'll have a VK as well, which is the Russian equivalent of Facebook. But you can also check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to see all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. So as I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one is a 12% American barley wine, and yeah, there's not much else to say about it than that. There wasn't too much information available on this one, but I've noticed that AF Brew and Zhagovor and a couple of others have been really starting to collaborate with the Scandinavian breweries. So I don't know if there's what the connection was to bring these guys all over. I don't know if they were at one of the beer festivals. I don't think they were at Brewskival from what I remember. Maybe they were at the Mikkeller Fest last time. But a few years ago, of course, Malmö Brewing Company had a few, they had a few Russian breweries over for their Russian beer festival. I think it was like 15 or something, and the quality of Russian craft beer is really pretty damn good, I have to say. So if you get the chance to try some Russian beer, I really recommend that you do, because you're in for a bit of a treat, especially if you find like AF Brew and Stam Brewing and things like this. There's some very good breweries in Russia, and do give me some brewery recommendations in the comment section below. But yeah, 12% American barley wine, this, a little 330ml tall can this. So let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm curious to see how this turns out. Now with this beer, as to how I got a hold of this, I actually can't remember. I was filming my out and about videos in Gothenburg, and then the next morning this was in my jacket, so yeah, kind of interesting to know how I got a hold of this one, but I actually don't know how I got a hold of this particular beer. So yeah, it was just in my pocket when I checked my jacket when I was leaving Gothenburg, actually, and it was a nice surprise, I have to say. So yeah, so as you can see with this beer, it's poured a lovely, how would you say that? That's a really dark kind of ruby, almost, I don't know if it's right to describe that as chestnut, if it's ruby or chestnut. It's a very dark, ruby-ish, very dark mahogany, chestnutty kind of colour. I think that's fair to say. You can smell some of the lovely fruity notes coming out of this one as well. I don't know when this one would have been canned actually, but it says that it's best before the 29th of August 2021. So I'm guessing that this beer perhaps was canned in August of this year, and I'm reviewing this one for you in November, so that means it's roughly about 3 months old, something like that. So hopefully it should have aged a little bit actually. It should be at the point where the hops are starting to kind of drop back a little bit, because you don't want to drink a barley wine too fresh, to be honest with you. But this one, it looks lovely in terms of its colour. You can see just from how oily the side of the glass is with this one, you can see how boozy this beer is. Incidentally, I think it said 13% on Untappd when I checked this out earlier, but it says 12% on the side of the can, so I'm not sure if there's been a few different versions of this beer, but in terms of appearance for a barley wine, this one isn't overly surprising. They can be a little bit more brown than this, but this kind of dark ruby colour that we have going on here is not surprising. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and there's a few little ones just going up towards that top layer of the beer. Incidentally, the head when it came out was just a very thin foamy layer, and I would say it was a light kind of, it's a very light kind of beigey colour, to be honest with you. This beer though is mainly clear. It's got a little touch, you can see little particles floating around in it, because beer of course is a suspension, it's not a solution, but you can see little particles floating around in there, but it is predominantly a kind of clear beer. So yeah, let's take a look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this. I tell you something, that smells lovely. One of the first barley wines I ever tried was Untappd number 100 for review number 100, and that's a beer that's just always kind of stuck in my mind, and the you know, the sweetness, the fruitiness and things like that. American barley wines can be absolutely beautiful if you catch them at the right time, and I always find that I have to admit I have struggled to find I found some really interesting European barley wines, but I think if you go to the American ones, I think that's a style that maybe Europe isn't quite as advanced in yet, to be honest with you. But you can find some very good barley wines here, but the American ones I think are a little bit above the European ones that we have at the moment. But this one really reminds me of that one from Untappd. I think this beer is going to be absolutely beautiful. Straight away you're going to notice the big brown sugary malts in this one. It's got sweet caramel in there, it's got that sort of Werther's Original butterscotchy type thing, and it's got a bit of a biscuity note to it as well, but a hell of a lot of brown sugar coming out of this beer. You can see that this one, the high alcohol in this beer is just, you know, it's just taking all the carbonation activity away. That comes across absolutely beautifully. There's not even any breadiness to this one. The malt base is all, it's boozy, it's got a lot of brown sugar to it. There's, you know, it's got everything you would want from an American barley wine. And the key difference I think between a lot of the European ones and the American ones, quite a few European breweries will try to brew a hybrid between an English barley wine and an American barley wine. When it comes to the style, I prefer the some of the English ones can be really nice, but I do prefer the American ones, to be honest with you. The English ones are a little bit more kind of treacly, if that makes sense. The brown sugars are a little bit more well fired, and the fruit is a little bit more kind of medicinal and phenolic, whereas the American ones, they're very sweet in the brown sugary qualities, and they're also a little bit more juicy when it comes to the red fruit, if that makes sense. That's the key difference between the American and the English barley wines for me, and this one most definitely is an American barley wine. There's no two doubts in my mind about that. On the hoppy side of things, you can pick up a little bit of grassiness, maybe a teeny bit of earthiness as well. But overall, the hoppiness that comes out of this beer, it is mainly all about the fruits, and the fruits come out beautifully in this one. You've got those pruny, datey notes in there, figs. Don't know if it's sharp enough for raisins right enough, but figs, definitely. A little bit of a blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing in there as well. The fruits come across as very juicy, a lot of red fruit in this one. and it just comes across very, very juicy, not phenolic like you can sometimes get, phenolic and medicinal that you can sometimes get from these American, the English rather, some of these English barley wines. This one's definitely got the big juiciness that you expect of an American take on this style. So take a bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of this beer, because it is absolutely beautiful. I mean, the aroma doesn't really have anything surprising for the style, but it's just really, really quite lovely actually. So yeah, thumbs up to both Stigbergets and and AF Brew for the aroma on this. That's a really nostalgic barley wine for me. It really reminds me of the old number 100. So yeah, let's just take a taste of this then and see how we get on. This one is the Tsar Cockerel, and the Tsar, of course, a reference to the old Russian monarchs. The cockerel, I don't know if that's a symbol of Gothenburg. I'm sure I've seen the cockerel as a symbol of Gothenburg or somewhere else in Sweden, maybe Jutland, I don't know. But yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we go on. The Tsar Cockerel from Stigbergets in Gothenburg and AF Brew in St. Petersburg. Skål, na zdrowie. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful beer. Yeah, it really has everything you'd want from this style. Just massive thumbs up, hats off, whatever, to Stigbergets and an AF Brew. Knowing these two breweries, Stigbergets have been really good when it comes to the Imperial Stouts and stuff recently. Young Awake and Trouble Sleep have both been really good. AF Brew, the stout that I had from them, and Lervig, the Fear of the Zafir, that was beautiful as well. So it's really cool to see that they can translate this into a barley wine, because I think this is a style, perhaps it's one that's a little bit difficult to do. To get the alcohol so high and get all the flavours that you want can be very difficult. But I think they've done a really nice job of this one. If you come across this beer, have a go at it, because it really is quite nice. Yeah, lovely stuff. Where to start with this one then? So yeah, straight away with this beer, you are going to feel how boozy this one is. It is a big boozy beast, to be quite honest with you. The middle of your palate, you can feel that there's a teensy little bit of a bready note to this one. You can feel that blanket in the middle of your palate. Probably it has a pale malt base in it. There's probably a pale malt base in here, which is giving you that sort of impression. But on top of that, the brown sugars just lay it on very, very thick. You can feel the sort of butterscotchy note. That's what's coming out on top of the kind of pale malty qualities for me. It's almost a little bit woody as well. This beer to me has a really sort of woody undertone, and you can feel that butterscotchy, woody sort of thing just kind of blanketing the whole of your tongue too, on top of that pale malty quality. In the very centre of your palate, you can get you do get that sweet caramelly brown sugary note in there. I don't think there's any real kind of treacle or molasses notes to this one. You can sometimes get those in barley wines. I'd say that they're a bit more prominent in the English take on this style, to be honest with you, than the American one. But as you move out from the centre of your palate, that big boozy caramelly circle there, because some of those flavours of course will be coming from the boozy side of the beer, you do get a little touch of a biscuity note out of this one. It's a little bit like a kind of McVitie's Digestive or like a Twix caramel, something like that. Not the chocolate though. But yeah, it's really kind of like that a little bit, the way the brown sugars and the biscuity side of this beer interact. It's really nice how it goes together. Yeah, this beer for me is really good. The way the malt base comes out in this one is nice. What you'll find with it, it makes a kind of interesting transition. It comes in big and oily, then it goes to be a little bit more sort of biscuity. You can really feel those sort of slightly grainy biscuity notes coming out of this one, but it's a sweet grain, I would say. And then the further you go into the aftertaste, it starts to get sweeter and more caramelly, and then you feel some of the darker boozy notes just lingering there on your tongue as well. It's a really interesting transition that the middle of your palate makes in this beer, but it's a beautiful example of an American barley wine, I have to say. This is really good. I mean, I don't even know what kind of to compare this to. There's a couple of American barley wines that I've been meaning to try, like the some of the ones from Hop and Frog, I've heard that they're very good, and I've seen those around, but I've never bought one. So I definitely need to do a Hop and Frog review at some point, actually. But you know, this is just a really nice example of the style for me. So you know, get it for yourself and just see how you get on. It really reminds me of the 100 from Lervik, not from Lervik actually, from Nugna in Norway. Yeah, that's good. And yeah, the sweetness, the more you drink of this as well, the more that oily brown sugary sweetness is going to come out. That's a beautiful beer. Yeah, so hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, there is a nice little bit of earthiness in there. You can feel it. I'm surprised at how present that is actually, but there is a little bit of earthy dryness there. As you come further forward along the sides of the palate, the earthiness spreads forward. You'll get to the front corners of the palate, and there's a nice little bit of a... You can feel the remnants of a sort of piney resinous floral quality in there. I suspect that probably they have used a bit of Chinook in here, just from the way that the kind of piney resinous notes are. But then round the very front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of a... you've definitely got a little bit of a kind of grassier note to this beer as well. But the way the fruits come out is really, really quite nice in this. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like Chinook, maybe a little bit of Cascade and perhaps some Williamette or something like this. This beer really does come across as being kind of a classic example of an American barley wine. It doesn't, you know, there's so many new hops and things these days, Sabro, Idaho 7, you know, the ones that have only seemed to have appeared in 2018, 2019. But this beer to me, it does seem a little bit old school, if it's even right to call it that. I mean, this barley wine is very similar to what I would have been drinking barley wine wise back in, you know, 2013, 2014. It's kind of, you know, kind of around that time. It's one of these ones that I think is it's almost like a flashback. I think it's fair to say that. And it's mainly the fruits, I think, that give that away in this one. But on the fruity side of things then, let's look at that part of the beer. Yeah, for me, it's all about the red fruits in this. If you go to the back of that oily bubble behind the front curve of your palate, you can feel at the back there is a little bit of that darker note there, and that's from, I suspect that would be from the kind of grapefruity notes that you would normally get from the Chinook and Cascade. Because remember, when you add different hops to different malts, Simcoe's a very good example in black IPAs, you'll always get a different kind of fruit profile from them. It depends what malts you mix them with as to what fruit flavours you get. But there's definitely a dark sort of reminiscence to this one from the kind of grapefruity notes, but as you come further forward, you start to get the datey, pruny kind of qualities out of this one, and then as you move towards the front of the tongue, it evolves to be a little bit more kind of figgy. I don't think there's quite a raisiny sharpness to this one, it's a bit more oily and juicy than that, but as you come further forward towards the edge of the tongue, you'll start to get figgy notes, a little bit of a black curranty, blackberry sort of thing as well. Williamette would be another hop that could be in here. I wouldn't be surprised about that one, to be honest. Northern Brewer, of course, from Germany, can give you some really interesting fruity qualities as well. But the fruitiness is really interesting because it gives you a really nice juiciness. It's well balanced between having a bit of sharpness, a bit of juiciness, and also having a bit of an oiliness. It's got a really, really good kind of three-way balance going on there as well. But yeah, I mean, there's not much more you can say about this one other than it's really, really very nice. It has a bit of a woody undertone, like I was saying, and it almost, if you go to the very centre of your palate and move forward, you'll almost get the impression of it being a little bit kind of cakey or something like this. There's almost like a kind of caramel, cakey type quality to this one. Just behind, it's just, as I say, in the centre of your tongue, move forward a bit behind the fruits, you'll get this little kind of caramel, shortcakey type thing to this beer as well, which is really quite interesting actually, so keep that in mind. But just in terms of flavour, a beautiful beer, this one. To me, it seems that this is a kind of, if it's right to say that, it's like an old school take on the American barley wine. It's very, very good. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I think it's fair to say this beer is full-bodied rather, not mid-bodied. Yeah, full-bodied beer. Carbonation, very, very smooth. Big oily mouthfeel. It's also got a lovely... you know, it's just really well balanced. In terms of hoppy bitterness with this one, I think you'd be lucky to get maybe 30 IBUs out of this. You can feel a little bit of bitterness at the back corners of the palate. No doubt that would die down if you aged this beer a little bit more, because the hops drop out. I suspect that this beer might be 3 months old, either that or it'll be 15 months or something like that, but Stigbergets, from what I remember with the high alcohol beers, they tend to say 2 years aging for them, so not sure about that. So I think this one probably is about 3 months old, to be honest. So maybe if you age it a little bit more, a little bit less hoppy bitterness, but lovely balance between the fruits there, juicy, oily, and a little bit kind of sharp in the beginning as well, and the malt base is lovely and sweet in this one. It dries out a teeny bit the further you go into the aftertaste, but mainly a big sweetness to this one. But a lovely big oily American barley wine, no doubt about it being an American barley wine as opposed to an English one, but just a beautiful, beautiful example of the style. So bear that in mind when you try it. If you can get a hold of this one, I really recommend that you do, particularly if you're a fan of this style. So yeah, hats off to both Stigbergets Bryggeri and to AF Brew for this one. This is a very nice example of an American barley wine. I might go as far as saying that this is one of my favourite beers I've tried from Stigbergets so far. So yeah, if they can do this, I'd love to see them have a go at a Scotch ale or something like that. So I did have a Scotch ale from Stigbergets a couple of years ago actually, or was that OO Brewing? I can't quite remember. But yeah, an awesome beer this one, and definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. So this one is the Tsar Cockerel, a 12% American barley wine from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg and AF Brew from St. Petersburg over in Russia. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from both of these breweries, and I'm sure I'll return to both of them at some point in the near future. Do give me some other Gothenburg beer recommendations. Some Russian beer recommendations as well are always welcome. Hopefully we continue to see the Russian breweries making their name over here in Europe, and we'll need to see how we go with that. I'd love to review some more Russian beers for you on the channel. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Tsar Cockerel, a 12% American barley wine from Stigbergets in Gothenburg here in Sweden, and AF Brew from St. Petersburg in Russia. Slanja, skål, na zdrowie.